Hello.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the today Falco Community call. This is the today agenda, and let's start with the highlight of this week. Oh, someone wrote that happy birthday to one of our maintainers. It's me. Thank you. Thank you again to everyone. Okay. Exactly. Thank you. Okay, next point of the highlights. Last week, we released the Falco 0.26.1. There is a blog post. I think Leo and Lorenzo are not here. No, they are not. Just a quick recap of this. This was a not fixed release shortly after the Falco 0.26, and this is the blog post. If you wanted to see more information about the release, you can see this blog post and also the change log. An important news that I also added here. From now on, we release Falco every 2 months, as we decided during the last community call. We already have a milestone for the next version, and is on the December 1st. Next point of the highlights, Leonardo Di Donato, that is not here, raised a topic in the main list about the Hack Oktoberfest. Basically, because the spammy pull request that we also had in our Falco website repository, the team of the Hack Oktoberfest decided to change their rules. Basically, now we can participate in 2 ways. One way is the usual one. I mean, just add the Oktoberfest tag in our repository. The other one is to selectively add a label to all pull requests that we think are good for the Oktoberfest. All the details are explained in this email that Leonardo sent to the mailing list, and asked to vote which solution do you prefer. So I want to just invite you all to read this message and send your vote in the mailing list. Okay, next point. Spencer has some update about the HackMD GitHub integration.
Sure, yeah. So I took the action to sort of investigate what the tighter integration is. Can I share my screen? Is that okay?
Yes, sure. Let's go.
Okay, so maybe. Can people see this okay?
Yeah, I see.
So this is like an example note that's been linked to GitHub, and then what it's been linked to is this repository. So if you go look at the history of this file, you can see it's, it's hackmd commits or whatever. And it's fine. I sort of put this in the Slack. Like, the good things about integrating it with GitHub is you give write access to the app to one repo and not, like the whole organization, Circle CI. And then when you set it up, you configure it to manage one file. So like, just as an example, we could come in here and we could say like, birthday. whatever, we had the meeting, we made some changes, and then it gets a little weird because it's not great. But what you do, and this is why I wanted to share my screen, is you come to this menu button, you go to versions and GitHub sync. You have to you make sure to select current note content. Then basically what you do on the HackMD side, effectively what you're doing is you're creating a checkpoint, which is what this means. And then you press push. And what it's going to do is it's going to make you name a version. And this is essentially the git commit. So we say like today's meeting notes. And then or something like that. And this becomes the git commit message. And it works okay. I think the thing that's annoying about it is it's sort of, from a Git perspective, all commits are accessible, but the most important thing is today's state, the current status. And on HackMD, it's not quite as obvious. So what I would keep doing is accidentally pressing, just being selected on a different version when I came into this UI. I suppose this pull button maybe works, but hopefully we would be out of the habit of modifying the file like on the GitHub UI or with pull requests or anything. So maybe nobody would need to press pull. So I'd say it's fine. I'm not sure it's like, since there isn't some giant button up here that's like sync to GitHub that always works, it's not as slick as it might have been, to be honest. But yeah, so that's what I was able to figure out.
So how does the auth work? Do you have to have write permission to Falco, or do you just have to be logged in with any old GitHub user?
Yeah, well, you definitely need. Let's see if how it reflects itself in the settings. I had to link it to my GitHub. I had to sign in with GitHub, and then I had to add the application. I had to add the HackMD app, I guess, to the Nibblizer organization is what I had to do. But I was impressed that I was able to give HackMD access to only one repository and not, the whole organization. And I think the fact that it tries to push it in does have some static with protected branches and all the GitHub do it right policies that we have.
Okay.
Yeah, so if I understood correctly, these work on your account because, of course, you have write permission on that repository. Is that correct?
Yeah.
But if, for example, the MC is another folk that doesn't have the right permission on the Falco Community repository, it will not work.
I don't know.
Really I'm just asking.
I don't really know.
That's what I would want to figure out, because to me, the whole point of having any integration here would be like to reduce the amount of buttons and work and copying and pasting that needs to happen. And to get every person who would potentially be running a call authenticated and have an app installed, and then they have to figure out how to translate a version to a git commit and follow the rules. At that point, we might as well just copy and paste and open up a regular PR, I feel like.
Right. I'm not sure this is that much better.
Exactly.
Does someone want to go to this HackMD and see if you can edit, and then if you can GitHub sync?
Yeah, you want to send me
I threw it in the Zoom chat.
Why don't we run the experiment? Let me try to open up a PR and see what happens.
Yeah.
I think that you still have a problem, like people that doesn't have access to it will not be able to contribute by being the MC.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's something nice about the HackMD being just kind of it's a whiteboard in an office. It doesn't really matter. And then what gets written into the repo matters a little bit more. It's not bad to have those as separate steps.
Maybe it's a stupid idea, but we might want to keep HackMD as the place where we do the things, and have something that in background just gets this and pushes. Like
I have a
That,
thought. This might be one of my good thoughts, or it might be a bad thought. It's still very early in the morning. Most of these meeting notes are directly related to Falco features in the long run. And as part of our release cycle, if we're doing it every 2 months and we have to go through the commit logs anyway, when we cut a Falco release, would it make sense then to copy all of the release notes from HackMD for the release into a file of meeting notes? And then just for each release until it's been released, we know that this is the source of truth?
I'm not completely sure about that, just for one reason. Usually we use the release note as a link to point the decision we made in the issue and in other place. So it's very useful to have on GitHub or somewhere else those release note as a single source of truth very soon.
I think we should relieve the release. The release notes should stay. I'm not suggesting that we remove them. I'm just saying that we add a step that is to also copy all of the notes that occurred during the release to the community repo as a new step to the release process, so that we're not doing it every week, and so that it gives people an opportunity to use them, make changes, add links if needed. Just a thought.
I don't know. We can do that also. What do you all think? Any question, ideas? Or maybe we just want to experiment another bit with this approach.
I haven't thought too hard about the meeting notes as release notes. But
so
I think
again, I'm not suggesting in any way we impact the release notes at all. I'm just saying, when you cut a release, all you do is you click the GitHub push button instead of doing it every week. Is all I'm suggesting.
Yeah, and what I'm saying is that it's just useful to have the meeting notes before a release, because you can point to them in GitHub comments, issues, and so
I really
on.
like the idea from Chris because it's very similar to what I proposed. I mean, doing it every time is just, a waste of time. And if we do it either on the release or I have a script that does that every 10 days, it's the same. I think that doing it in the release is a very good thing because the people doing the release can, have a chance to look at them and see if they missed anything. So
I also just like the idea of every release having us kind of start fresh. Like this becomes a working document that we add on to every week. And then we come back after a release and we have a white canvas again.
Yeah. And I have also another question. Who will check the content of the meeting notes? Because everyone can edit it, so we can be sure that nobody changed the release note. In the meanwhile, we store them on Git. This, I think, is another point.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the release note part. I was only referring to the fact that we push the document.
No, I was talking in general. At some point in time, we should push those meetings notes on a repository.
Let me put it in this other way. If you make a PR to Falco, right now, you fill the release note field, right? And there's an automation that goes there and take it and put it. When you do that, it's the exact same thing that you are saying. Someone that made a PR can write poop in the release notes. And if no one looks at the release notes, we're going to have written poop in 0270, right?
Exactly.
So, I feel like really, who just released it? I mean, you have to read them. If you don't read them, are you supposed to make the blog post? Are you supposed to finish the release? I mean, reading the release notes is a basic task of who does the release. And
Okay,
that's
so
just a truth.
okay. Anyway, we still need automation for this. Okay, I don't know if
so where did we get to?
Go.
Do we want to for meeting notes? Or we think we're gonna push using HackMD, or we're just gonna keep pull requesting the way we've been doing it? I think my preference would be to keep pull requesting because I don't think the HackMD GitHub integration is all that provides any.
I agree that the HackMD GitHub integration doesn't provide. In my mind, it was just going to make it easier for us to push it, to back it up on GitHub every week. But at this point, it looks like it's kind of a wash. In other words, it doesn't really save us anything; it just introduces more complexity.
exactly.
So I would say that in that case, we're still faced with the problem of the chore of having to push every week. Which is why I suggested instead of just updating these every week, it just becomes part of the tasks that are completed during the release process to document these in Git then, so that it's a living, breathing whiteboard in the office while we're working on the release. And then at the time of the release, we document it, it gets archived, and it doesn't really change after that. And so basically all I'm saying is instead of doing the GitHub pull request every week, we're just doing it. It's just part of the release team's responsibilities to come here and copy and paste this and archive it. And if they want to use the GitHub sync, go for it. If they want to just do a PR, also seems to be the same.
I mean, I like the idea of collecting the
I mean, that's what they do for the Kubernetes, governance. They basically have has nothing to, the release notes are kind of funneled after the fact. So having you need some type of gatekeeping function. You can't just have it so the HackMD goes after the fact. So again, unsolicited feedback there is what I would kind of vouch for that.
Yeah, you want these to feel easy enough that anyone can contribute, so that we're getting all contributions and all thoughts, because that's the point of having these meetings. But at the same time, we need a place to archive them and search them and store them and reference them later. All I'm saying is, instead of doing it every week, we can do it every release cycle, and we can store it that way. To give you an example of what this might look like if we go strictly one way or the other, right now there's a Google Doc that my personal Gmail account is an owner of, that goes back to 2016, that has over 400 pages of COPS meeting notes. And if you actually try to search that document for something, it takes it's a long time to scroll through this document to find meeting notes going back 4 years. And the other thing would be if we did a Git pull request for the next 4 years for every week, we're looking at a couple hundred pull requests for Falco meeting notes as well, which that adds up. So again, just saying, all we're doing is spreading out the amount of time that we do the backup from every week to every release cycle.
Okay. Personally, I like the Chris idea. I don't know, maybe Chris, do you want to formalize this way of archiving notes in an issue on the community repository, so we can change the process then?
I think all I could do would be to add a step to the release.md.
Yeah.
That would just say, copy these notes, put them here. Here's what you name them, and it just becomes another step that we do in the release process. And then we can just continue to take notes here and we don't have to care about it.
It's okay for me. Any thoughts about
Yeah.
that? Okay.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense.
Okay. Cool. So we can continue.
So are we should add that to the release MD file, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to open up a pull request. Yeah.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Chris. Perfect. Okay. The next point is the first one and the only one in the today agenda, and is the user space proposal by Radu. Please.
Yep. So pretty much we need to decide what do we do next with it. So I have discussed in the meantime with Leonardo, and what emerges is we need to decide whether we open it as a repository. What do we do with the proposal? What do we do with Kilt itself, which right now is a pull request on the evolution repo? And if we open an additional repository for the definitions part. So the part that contains specific bits for Falco integration with additional, I've seen additional tools. I've seen somebody using an additional tool that injects into the entry point. So that might be an additional example on how to integrate both Falco and that using Kilt. So then we need to decide about the release, so the artifacts of the Falco with Kilt, and we need to decide for PDIG, how is it going to be published. So let's start first with the proposal. What are there any other feedbacks regarding the proposal that I made?
This is the request of the proposal.
Yeah.
Personally, I think the proposal is okay. Maybe we can just add some refinements just to explain well to the readers every detail of this proposal and how we are going to implement it. For example, I saw you added an action section.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's perfectly good. In my opinion, regarding the first point, I think it's a good idea to add Kilt as a repository and not including it just into the evolution repository. So I agree on that. And I want to ask you all, what do you think about that? And if nobody disagrees, we could start to create that repository.
For me, a repository looks good.
Okay, so
Thumbs up.
perfect.
Perfect.
Yep.
I gave a thumbs up too. I'm just working on that pull request right now also, so I don't want y'all to hear my keyboard.
Perfect.
Another thing.
I have no say. I'm just here, just in awe of all of you.
That's
So
okay.
can I just do this? All right.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. For the other repository, the Kilt definition.
So this would include the Docker files for how to build Falco with Kilt support, would include the utilities for that we need, like the launcher, the various utilities that we can provide, like the log shipper, I don't know, wait forever binary, and which are part right now of the Kilt repository. So in this case, we would keep Kilt repository with just the definition of the config file and the various runtimes. So the runtimes for each implementation. And on the Kilt definitions, we would have the utilities and Docker files for integration with Falco, integration with Falco plus, I don't know what was called Chrono or something.
Okay.
Yep. So
Just
this is an alternative.
yeah.
So in
Just,
practice, one of the repositories will be independent from Falco and just a generic tool that can be used with everything, and the other one contains the files that are specifically needed to use these in conjunction with Falco. Am I understanding this right?
Yes.
Yeah. And this it's perfectly fine for me. I think even Kilt is a general purpose tool. I mean, it can be used for a lot of things. It makes perfect sense to have it on the Falco organization. And of course, it makes sense to have a specific repository with all definition needed for Falco. I think, I'm not sure if this is well explained inside the proposal yet, I don't know. But in my opinion, I'm talking for me, if this will be explained inside the proposal is okay for me. What do you think?
I'm more for having a Kilt repository and a folder in evolution for the Falco specific definitions, so that we can.
Yeah, I would back that up, or just put the definitions in the Kilt repo, right? Like until
Yeah, I agree.
there's a
That makes sense.
discoverability issue there, right? With a new tool, you want what you do with it to be obvious and close by.
I think that having them in the Kilt repo sounds good too. Even if Kilt is very generic, we can, market that folder in the Kilt repo, like Spencer was doing, as a use case to look at where you want to use Kilt, and also use that as our implementation in Falco. So
Yep.
a very good example for this is the seeds caller repo. That's a fuzzer for the kernels. That is a very generic fuzzer, but it has a specific implementation for what Google needs. Even if you can write your own implementations, like for the Linux kernel, for the BSD kernel, for other kernels. So I think that this could be a very similar situation.
So I think the vision that we have in the long term for Kilt as an influence on this, because this has been designed specifically to solve a problem with Falco currently. At the same time, we are aware that this is a generic tool that solves a problem that, for what I understand, it's an open problem in general, and could potentially be a solution for the problem for many other tools. So if we believe that there's a broader need for this, and we assume or have the hope that this will generate an independent, let's say, community, and gather essentially people around it in the future, then there's an argument for keeping it more independent and organizing it in a way that is more separated from Falco. And even if Falco is inside and is part of it, make it very clear, essentially structure it in a way that is modular and makes clear that Falco is just a module for this. If we believe that we are solving more the problem for our community, which is totally fair, then at that point, something that more clearly and strongly ties the two projects is fine, and it's probably welcome, because at that point it's more natural to deal with, instead of having to deal with two projects that are isolated. I personally don't have a full sense of what Kilt will become, and we can probably change our approach depending on where this will go in the future. But yeah, if we have a little bit of ambition, that also depends on you, Radu, and how much, essentially, as the father of the tool, you want to position it as a general tool versus the solution for a Falco problem.
So the way I did it is pretty much to address the problem in the most generic way possible. So I have actually two options right now, which to me don't make any difference. So the first option is actually to make the bits part of the Kilt repository, and if it ever goes bigger, then we can split the repositories and do more work on it, like more splitting, expanding on it, and so on. And the second option would be opening another repository right now. But honestly, I don't think there is much preference in these two cases from my side. So I would prefer, for a tidiness perspective, to have it separated. But from a point of view of how the repository is going to be modified and worked on, that doesn't make any difference at all for me.
So basically, we could have everything inside one repository and then decide later what to do.
Yep.
That it's okay for me, and I think also for Spencer, that already proposed that, and I don't know.
Works for me.
Yeah.
Again, within the same repository, we can still essentially,
Exactly.
you know, implement some kind of concept of modules, at least in the structure of the code, so that we make it clear essentially that this is one of potentially many.
So regarding the evolution repo, if we are making a separate repository for Kilt, I would prefer to have this in the Kilt repo compared to the evolution repo for discoverability. Because if somebody searches for the Kilt repo, maybe they want to see directly the stuff related to it inside the repo.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I agree too.
Sounds good.
Okay, so I think that nobody disagrees in having everything inside the Kilt repository. And so the next action are just to close the pull request against evolution that you made.
Mm-hmm.
And
we're sorry you made this dope pull request and we're closing it.
Goodbye.
you can close it by yourself, so it's okay for all. And then we have to create the new repository in the Falco organization, and then you can start to push your code inside that repository.
Because Leo is not here, whoever makes the new repo, please use the repo template that we put together in the .github.
Yes, exactly. Good advice.
So glad you told that, because otherwise it would have been.
Leo would freak out at us if we didn't do it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. So about the next point, the artifacts. The artifacts themselves, so my plan here is actually to do, once we have a repo, Kilt repo, to define several Circle CI jobs that create the artifacts. Is that fine?
Okay, is that fine? But if I remember correctly, there is another piece here. Basically, to make this work, you need a Docker image that contains Falco, Kilt, and other stuff.
Yeah.
And this cannot be the official image just because you need the Falco in another path and things like that. So it's a custom image that you please explain.
About that, I have some progress regarding to this. I made the PR, so some people have seen already. I have a PR for that is already merged for 0.27, which you can specify an alternate Lua directory to look for. So which means that we can use the official images and start from those. So you can from Falco latest Slim, because we need the static build, and then just copy the binaries inside there. I have a Docker file in the PR for that is right now for evolution, that is gonna be closed, that builds pdig master in Docker. So so that is kind of addressed as well. Maybe in the future we want to define something that a release process for pdig, but right now this is how I set it up.
Okay, so just to summarize, if I understood correctly, you will add a CI step that will build an image built from the official image of Falco, and inside this image you will add all the Kilt magic and also PDIG. That's correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So before that, we need also to publish PDIG as an artifact and add its own CI workflow. And I think this is everything, correct?
Yes, I'd like to publish also the image under Falco, Falco release.
Sure, sure. So then at some point we have to decide a name for that. I don't know, maybe Falco-user space or something like that. Of course, we need to label it as a sandbox and not as an official, because we have our flow about that specify the scope of artifact. But in my opinion, at some point, it's perfectly fine to publish this image under the Falco Security Organization Docker app. Any thoughts? Okay, I think nobody disagree.
What about Falco user space, Falco-user space? Is that name okay? Because that way I can start writing, once the repository is up, I can start writing the Circle CI YAML based on the one that you have on the Falco repository.
I think it's okay for me.
What was the question? The name of the repo?
Yeah, the
name of
you don't just want to call
Falco, Falco image with Kilt. So Falco-user space.
Just to let you understand.
Oh, sure.
Basically, now we have a few images on our Falco security. Okay. So basically now we have a bunch of image here. Some of them maybe are not updated anymore. I don't know. And we have to add another image here that is for the Falco user space use case. Of course, I want to stress a bit on that. Not all of these images are officially supported as per our as per our adoption model, and it's explained here. So this is another thing that we should do, in my opinion. We should start to mark each project with the correct status, because right now we are just saying that some artifacts are official, but we are saying nothing about the others. This was just to add a bit of a context, but just to conclude, I think it's okay to have Falco-user space here.
Rad.
So I think is that okay? Okay. What is the point? I'm writing it down in the notes. Okay, that's it. I don't know if Radu, you have any other thoughts about that?
Yeah, so regarding the publishing of PDIG, is it okay to make it part of the Falco user space? So what I mean, the release process would be part of the Falco user space Docker image.
I have a strong +1 for that. I think that would be huge.
Okay, because right now that's what happens in reality with the PR that I have there.
What would be the alternative, Radu?
Would be, the alternative would be to create a separate release process, so something that lives in the PDIG space that creates the artifact there. What I am proposing is to make the artifact as part of the Falco user space build image.
I personally think that having two separate workflow would be the best thing for a lot of reasons. And then I'm seeing Lorenzo that agrees on that. Eventually, we could start just having one release flow inside the Kilt at the beginning, and then when the release process on PDIG is completed, we can just change it in Kilt. Actually, I'm not sure who is taking care of PDIG right now. Lorenzo, maybe you?
That's what I was trying to advocate the +1 for, which is getting a release process established for PDIG and understanding what that whole thing would effectively look like. The reason for that is because we have the release process for Falco, which is very clearly we separate the image from the artifacts. The Helm chart was the second one that we did, which doesn't really have the same deliverables like we do with the Falco artifacts and the Falco container image. So really PDIG would be the first new deliverable that we come up with. And do we make that part of the official Falco release process, or do we keep it separate? And then after we solve that, I think then we can figure out how that fits into Kilt.
I agree.
I agree too.
It's also the simpler road, which is simple and very, easy to achieve on a, thinking point of view.
How I haven't been on any of the build infra release calls, but like how much of a difference would it be to add a new step in the release to start working on PDIG? So right now we have Falco tarballs, we have Falco Debian, and we have Falco RPM. If we also had, and we have the driver, if we also had PDIG in there as well.
I don't think that we are forced to release PDIG in the same moment. I think a PDIG can be released separately.
So what is a PDIG release? Is it a container? Is it PDIG is essentially right? Is a separate executable that you optionally use together with Falco essentially in the same place. So what do we release when we release PDIG? Do we need to release them separately ever? Is there a need for PDIG to live independently, potentially because it could be used by sysdig, right?
But in general,
but
also by.
But do we care? But in this context, we are mostly worried about Falco, right?
But there are my opinion.
Release process.
Sorry, Lorenzo, go on.
We can do a couple of things. First thing, we can have a tarball that you can just download with a static PDIG binary, uncompress it and just use it. That's what Radu needs. Second, you can apt install PDIG and just use it along with the Falco that you have. I mean, in general, it will make the deployment of PDIG related workflows.
We could also do something crazy, so like going for doing a Scratch Docker image with just PDIG, and at that point, this would be used during build processes of other Docker containers easily.
Anyway, in my opinion, there are also
Good
other reason why PDIG should have its own release process, because with its own release process, we can test it separately, and we can guarantee that the artifact we will publish are tested and follow a specific workflow. For example, yeah, if you build PDIG inside Kilt, and at some point the build breaks, you don't know if it's a PDIG problem or it's a Kilt problem. On the other hand, if PDIG has its own release process, when it breaks for any reason, you will see that in its own workflow. And in my opinion, because adding a workflow for that, it's not so complex. It's just a circle CI file and some other step to publish it somewhere, I think on Ventray. It's a good place for that. We could do that in a, I mean.
By the way, another comment to make is I do not expect PDIG to change much. It's not like Falco that will have releases with a bunch of new possible breaking stuff very, very often. You know, PDIG serves a very, very specific function, and modular bugs that I think, you know, I don't expect this function to change or the project to have substantial contributions in the long term. So maybe we can assume there's a period of you know, we're stabilizing it and fixing some bugs, but at the point it's something that, in my opinion, will stay more or less the way it is for a very long time.
Also, the API scope of it, it's all iterating buffer, and
exactly.
It's probably never changing. And if it changes, we can have a strategy. But since it should never change, we are not even supposed to, you know, make compatibility.
So should we just make a release of a static PDIG binary, add it to GitHub where you can download it, and then if and when it ever becomes a problem again, we can talk more about it?
I was almost tempted to propose that, you know, keep it simple for the moment. If things change dramatically, we'll adapt. But for the moment, that's the simplest possible solution to the problem for sure.
Strong +1 to simplicity. Strong +1 to simplicity.
I feel like we can do a manual release and at least
and see what happens. If we have the problem of having to do too many, then it's time to spend time on that.
We have a static build, and I think it should be the static build because it's the most portable one, as you said. And the only thing we want to do is describe in a release MD the process, and the process is create the binary locally and upload it on GitHub, so that if we ever need to do another release next week, we can just do the same steps.
I have a question about the PDIG static build. Sorry, I just put a piece of chocolate in my mouth because I'm an adult and I have chocolate for breakfast. Which architectures does Muzzle build for PDIG?
It's always x86, x86-64. Italian is very difficult for this.
No, it's okay. Okay, thank you.
But we can have, like, if we decide that we want to release for another architecture, for PDIG it's very easy because, I mean, you can just build another architecture using the same steps and upload it because it doesn't have to do the automation.
I might try to get PDIG working on ARM64. If I get a binary, do we want me to sign it and upload it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, I have just the last question about that. Who will take care of that? I mean, who will take care of PDIG? I don't know if Radu want to help. I mean, in the workflow and everything.
I can help with some of the CI stuff. So
I can help as well.
Perfect.
I'm doing some PRs to PDIG soon because there are some bugs in the way it uses things from the user space code. But so if you have any questions on the build, I can I can answer because
Okay.
I've been
Perfect.
puking around it mostly.
And I'm seeing there are just already some approvers. Also, Loris is an approver. You can approve PR, Loris.
Wow, I'm famous.
Big.
Problem solved.
Yeah. Okay. So we have less than 5 minutes, but there is the last point added by Chris. Do you want to talk about this, Chris?
Yeah, so if y'all remember, about a half hour ago, I suggested
Okay.
archiving the meeting notes at the
Perfect.
release time.
It
These
arrived.
are two pull requests that add documentation changes to support what we talked about.
Perfect. Thank you, Chris.
My head is spinning.
Okay, I think we have done.
We can enter in a
First-
loop where we talk about something at the start of the call and then it's finished by the end.
Exactly. We are in recursion mode.
I was like it was like 4 lines in documentation changes. Like I feel like I'm gonna get picked up by a Hacktoberfest bot for just making 1-line documentation changes.
But hey, you'll get your T-shirt.
So I can add it to the giant laundry bag of t-shirts I never wear.
So, just the last thing before we declare this call ended is who wants to be the next MC? Chris? Okay, thank you, Chris.
Sure.
Perfect.
Yep.
Just one S. Okay, I think we have done.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Great to see
Bye.
everyone. Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye. Happy birthday, Leo.
Thank you.
Got it.
Ciao.
Thank you. Ciao.